Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to be starting a new theme this week as we do on Mondays, and this one is otherworldly music. These are going to be songs that the best way you can describe them is otherworldly. Maybe they take you to an out-of-body experience. Maybe they give you an undescribable mood. Just something that seems unnatural, not of this world. And that's what we're going to be looking at. Today we're going to be checking out a band called Agalloch, which sounds so familiar. Oh yeah, I just did an album review for Agalloch's Ashes Against the Grain. You can find a link for that right up there in the corner if you're interested. It is 2 hours long. It's a pretty thorough investigation of what that album is doing. So let's get into this though. This is the song Black Lake Niðstång. And let's see what Agalloch is bringing to the table today. Well, it certainly have my attention. This is quite an opening. Very percussive strings on these guitars as well. There's a twanginess and a buzzing, a very sharp buzzing on each stroke. That lead guitar too is just, it's very monolithic. There's something about it that it seems to dominate everything about this section. And it's really not doing anything other than playing a single note. That is some tasty guitar work. interesting that they're keeping this same vibe, primarily in the key and note selection, but they've completely shifted the roles of all these instruments. Really digging into this post-rock idea of sticking within a single idea for an extended period of time to really fully explore it. Interesting delay there. Yeah, so we're alternating 4/4 and 9/8 to get that little delay. It's really interesting how they mix atmospheric stuff, textural soundscape elements with melody, and when they choose what to use. Vocal tone, I think, is really interesting because it sounds like a mixture of a fry and yelling, like really digging into where that moment where the voice cracks. The first time they did that, it was a bit rough. It feels like they've got more into a groove, but it's interesting to hear those little elements of human imperfection throughout the song. It's bizarre that we're only like halfway through it and there's still more, and yet I feel like we've heard a complete song already. I'm really interested to see where they're taking this. But it also feels like we really haven't explored much. Everything up to this point has been either the intro or the first new idea with slight variations on it. Interesting. So we're still in 4/4, but we've broken it up into ideas primarily of 3. Feels like 2 groupings of 6 and then a group of 4. Reverb, just a ton of reverb everywhere actually. The production on this is so key to achieving the vibes that they want. Every time they add in an odd instrument like this, it always throws me off, but it tends to work very well once everything comes together. And now we have entered into a true triplet feel, if not having passed into 6/8. Yeah. I haven't quite figured out if there's a delay or not. But if there's not, there's a few layers here. And I love what it's building up to. Where did that come from? left hand guitar is continuing that last idea though. And there's a tremolo pick guitar that's kind of center pan that's bringing in an earlier idea as well. But doing it much faster rather than holding out whole notes. Interesting contrast here too rhythmically between what the drums are doing and what the guitars are doing. Bringing that intensity up, but those bass kicks. Agalloch. They continue to surprise me. Always something different from them. I think I have them pegged, and they do bring in this core, like post-black metal, I guess we could call it, like a mix of black metal textures with post-metal or post-rock's tendency to sit in a single vibe, but much like when we checked out Ashes Against the Grain, they incorporate other ideas in there to keep it fresh, to, whatever's in service of the story, I would say. They're not necessarily aiming for a specific genre. They more have a vibe in their head, a story that they want to tell musically, and they incorporate whatever is necessary to tell that story. And we saw a little bit of the black metal, the tremolo picking and the double bass kicks and the growls, all that stuff kind of came in the end, and there was a moment in the middle where we had all of those come together as well. But for the most part, I would say this was more of a textural, atmospheric song that sat inside of a lot of quiet, serene moments, more so than anything aggressive like black metal would typically gravitate towards. And it's because of that I think I'm going to have a tough time talking about this one. It does a lot of little things, but it does those for such a long time that the song kind of, it doesn't work for me on some levels. Like, the structure's there. And I think that they do a fantastic job of taking us on this journey, right? And the journey, I think, is well structured as well. We have great rising action. We have, peak moments of climax. We have the denouement. We have a nice outro there at the end, and there's callbacks all throughout. There's elements that exist in multiple sections. We get to hear some parts in new context. On paper, I really enjoy a lot of what's going on in this, but maybe it's because it is one of those songs that needs to be felt, not analyzed, that left it feeling a bit lacking for me because of the way I approached it. I don't, I do see how people could listen to this and say, man, this transported me to another realm. This was just phenomenal. I feel some of those elements in places for sure. And, it's also a very subjective theme, right? What's going to be otherworldly or transportive for one person might sound mundane to another. And at least for me, this kind of fell into the mundane camp for me. There's something very bleak and human about this song that I got out of it emotionally. But that's just my. Can we take a moment right here? I'm going to pull this back up real quick. I don't know how well you can see it. In the top left corner here, though, we have. I can't even point over that far. The top left corner, and then the far left picture in the second row, in the middle row, they're both of the album of whatever this album is. And I mean, it's tiny. I don't know how well you can see it. If you're on mobile phones, you probably can't see it at all. But it's really interesting to see how the bottom of the album art bleeds into the top of itself, and it makes this loop element. It looks like there's possibly a lake here or a river. Probably a river, that makes more sense. And it's reflecting this gray sky. And that reflection perfectly, the outline of the snow around the river perfectly blends into that sky again when you put the top of the album right next to the bottom, or the top of the album cover right next to the bottom of it. Really cool. And I don't know if that was done on purpose. I don't know if they purposely grabbed the image, put it under, and said, we want these two to connect or not. But it's really interesting to see how there's this element of cycling, a cyclic quality to the album art. I wonder if that works horizontally as well. I mean, I would wager it's just white snow with trees, and there's nothing quite at the edge of either of them. Well, there's that little patch of black on the left. I wonder if that would connect anything on it. I don't know. It's close. I don't know if that's going to connect. Anyways, I just think it's really interesting that it makes this image that looks like it continues on. And I wonder if that was done intentionally or not. Anyways, so yeah, there's a lot of cool things going on in here structurally. Everything works on paper for me, but it's just the song didn't come together as a whole. I really felt it should have ended around that 9 or 10 minute mark when I said that it felt like a full song, and I was curious to see what was going to happen from there on. And I don't think the second half really sold me on being necessary. Those are just some, I guess, just my initial thoughts coming off of this, where I'm at right now. But let's dive into some nuance and see where it takes us. First thing I want to start with is the production. The song relies so heavily on production, and I'm going to include guitar tone in here and any effects that the guitars might be using, reverb and amplification and compression. It's not necessarily part of the mixing, but it is part of taking the electric guitars that they have and creating a sound that's going to fit the vibes of what they're doing. This whole track has this heavy reverb on it that makes it feel very empty, which I think is the opposite of how or why reverb typically gets used, but I think is intentionally done in this case. So reverb is typically used to make something feel large, or make it feel like you're in a large room. A lot of reverb effects in software have a slider for room scale. That's usually what I've seen it called. It literally, the acoustics of the room. How big of a room do you want it to be? It allows sound to bounce around more or less depending on the size of the room. Gives you a wider or a more narrow reverb. And so usually we would go for a wider reverb to make it feel like this big instrument in a big place sometimes. And here we have some reverb, but it doesn't quite. Okay, we have reverb. It's a large reverb. A lot of these sounds in here have a lot of width to them, but it never quite feels like we're filling up a space. It always feels like there's more area in the sound sphere for sound to exist in. And even though we have these very large moments in the song, they still feel small in comparison to what's around them, the space that they can fill. And it makes the sound overall, the song overall, or even in some of these instances, just a single instrument that is filling the space, it makes them feel tiny, insignificant in the larger possibility of the sound. There's only one moment I think that I actually feel like the sound was completely full and the sound sphere was filled up in all directions, and that is the final moments when we had the rising intensity right before everything cut out and we returned to that looping acoustic guitar line. That was really the only moment in song, and that was what, a minute long out of the 17 minutes, so a very small fraction. Just a little over 1/5, I suppose, of the song that actually felt full, that actually felt complete. And oh no, not 1/5, 1/17. Yeah, that actually felt like it was filling up all of its potential in a sense. Everything else felt like a tiny voice in a vast chasm, and like I said, the song to me feels very bleak, right? There's definitely some elements of wonder. I'll say the opening segment was beautiful at kind of putting me in this mindset of being in the presence of something otherworldly. I was talking about that monolithic guitar. We'll get to that in a second. But even that section feels small against the potential. It feels insignificant. And that idea of being small within a vast environment, to me, just it feels nihilistic. It feels bleak. There's this weight, I suppose, even though, which is interesting. They've achieved this weight without going the full black metal route, without getting that aggression of the tremolo picking and the 16th notes across the bass kicks and the growls and all that. They still found a way to make their song weighty, to still have an impact, I suppose. Weight might not be the right word for it. It is impact, I think. And a lot of that comes from the production, the way the instruments are placed, the way that they are tweaked to sound, the reverb they have, the compression they have. All of it just kind of comes together to create this very bleak, oppressive sound. And I'm waiting to dig into these lyrics. I am, because I think it's an interesting story they're telling here. I'm trying to stick with my mind's going everywhere. It really is. There's a lot I want to say here. Um, the production on the drums specifically is very muted, right? Um, and this is an interesting decision as well. The bass kick is very dry. It really is just sort of the thump. You don't get any of the reverberation off of it. You don't get any of the overtones. You just kind of get that low end thump. And you can hear this specifically. I pointed it out at the end when the bass kicks came in with those 16th notes. It doesn't sound like bass kicks. It sounds more like, I don't even know. I don't have a point of reference for it, whether it's an instrument or not. It's kind of like someone banging on a wall, I guess. You're kind of getting that hollow, deep thumping sound, but you're not getting any of the brighter elements of the drum head reverberating or any of that. It's sort of just this low end beat. The snare doesn't have a lot of its brightness. I'd say even the cymbals are a bit tuned down. And they don't cut through. A lot of modern production, I don't know when this was made. 2010, so modernish, 12 years old. In a lot of modern rock and metal, the cymbals cut through. And a part of that's just going to be that a lot of instrumentation is in the lower end, and the cymbals are going to be some of the highest stuff, so they cut through just because they're the only instrument in that range that really has this bright, higher pitched sound to it. But here they feel very muted. Everything about the drum kit feels very muted. The guitars, I think, really are what stand out the most here. I think it's also interesting that the guitars exist the most often. The drums are not in a majority of this track. Man, there's a lot of moments with limited or no drum presence at all. Yeah, man, it is a lonely song. Did anybody else get that? Is it just me? The song feels very lonely to me. So yeah, the production on the guitars, production on the drums, and just the reverb overall. Even when the glockenspiel came in, the bells, they had this massive reverb on them. They were sitting above everything else, volume wise as well as range wise, and they really should have been this big moment, but instead they kind of felt isolated. I think there were some guitars playing along with it, and the bass was there. But they had all the volume, all the spotlight, and they still felt so minuscule in the song. It's a wild idea to go for it, and they went for it full on. They really committed to this idea in every aspect of the production just to make it feel small despite everything. So yeah, man, what should we talk about next? Because there's so much. Let's go to the beginning. All right. So we have a very atmospheric opening. There's birds and wind or something like that, if I remember correctly. But what I remember primarily from the opening is these acoustic guitars, very percussive, playing with the drums that are being. They're playing primarily tom and snare, I think, maybe some bass kicks, not a lot of cymbal, if I remember correctly. It was really going for this low end sort of uh, wild wilderness forest kind of vibe. And there's something. Oh yeah, the guitar strings were like super twangy with a ton of bite on the attack. They had this thunk to each attack, and there's some heavy vibrations being picked up as well, almost like the strings were just a hair bit loose. They had a little bit of extra give to them and allowed them to vibrate against the uh, whatever that thing's called at the top of the neck that has the little hooks that kind of hold the string in place right before the tuning knobs. Yeah, it sounded like there was just a little bit of give there where they could vibrate against it and get a little bit of extra percussive element out of each attack. And yeah, so we have that paired with the drums doing their very, very earthy kind of drumming, right? A lot of lower end stuff, really focusing on that, and not necessarily rhythmic ideas. It's really focusing on this, just this low end, almost heartbeat kind of vibe going on. And I don't remember when it happened. I don't remember if it was right there at the beginning and I missed it, but this sharp sound pierces through all of it. And it's the electric guitar that I came to find out. Um, but it's monolithic, right? Against all of this very acoustic, natural sound, we have this very sharp, very aggressive, buzzy almost guitar sound come in. It's center panned, which I don't think a guitar is ever center panned at all throughout the rest of this song. And it's just holding out these long notes and just sort of existing in this monolithic way, like it's looking down upon these basic life forms. You know, the acoustic guitar and the toms. You know, what are these basic instruments? I have evolved. I am made of electricity, and I have effects put on me. I am the next stage of you. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from it. It's intimidating, but only in a way because we don't understand what it is, only in a way because it is so large, but it does not see the rest of the instrumentation as a threat. It has no intentions on squashing it because they are that insignificant to it. It sits there and watches out of nothing but curiosity. And that's what the opening, 6 minutes of the song was for me. It was this overbearing sound that simply existed and watched. Uh, and again, it made me feel small, made me feel insignificant against a larger element, tying into the way that the production works. It's again, and I'm really curious. Let me know in the comments if you felt this way too. There is something, at least for me, about that guitar that I will agree feels otherworldly. It feels like finding a relic that disrupts our entire understanding of reality, or having a giant spaceship appear, in our atmosphere and not really come down and greet us, but just kind of hover above us. And again, makes me question my reality. What is real? What, everything that we thought we knew was wrong. There's more life out there, or there's more lives not necessarily in space, but in other dimensions. It doesn't necessarily need to be something of this dimension or this plane, just anything that would be incomprehensible to a human mind, at least in this point in time. And it gives way for a few it gives way for the next section of the song, which is a variation on it. They get rid of the center electric guitar, and the two acoustics that are pan left and right get swapped out for electrics. They continue some of the ideas from the acoustics, but they're done in a slight variation. And we bring in some more traditional drums. I think the cymbals are introduced here. They're more metronome style, and then the black metal growls come in here as well. I think this is one of the most standard parts of the song. It feels like they created something a bit more traditional for them to sing over. It was definitely the least impactful part of the track for me. However, something interesting about this section is in its first variation, we go through a small iteration on what the guitars and bass are doing, and what really stands out to me though is the vocal style in this one. It feels Desperate. I had mentioned that it was, what did I say? Something along the lines of like a mix between a proper fry scream and yelling, really digging into that moment where the voice cracks, and leaning into that sound of having this desperation of just yelling as loud as you can, and having that voice crack. And it continues to tie into this element of bleakness. It feels again like somebody or a sound, any sound, being as loud as they can. There's definitely a little bit of reverb on it. It's a little bit wide, and it feels just so small against everything else around it. We have this large bass tone. We have these guitars doing this harmonized idea, and there's still all this space around it. And he's just yelling out, and I feel like he's not being heard. That no matter how loud he gets or how desperate his pleas become, they will go unanswered. And after this section, I believe, is when we head into the moment where I said the song really should have ended. It was when we let everything die down a little bit and went into we returned to the acoustic guitars. And I love this section with the acoustic guitars. I do. It is beautiful on its own. It's beautiful within the song as well, but even just looking at it as an isolated moment, I think there's some really neat ideas in here. I love the harmonies that go on within it. And it evolves, right, into some really neat ideas as well when we get that multi-layered reverb or loop based, I think. It might be reverb, it might be looping. Like I said, I wasn't really sure if it was multiple layers or if we just had a delay put in there, where all these guitar layers were coming together and creating this interesting melody that was both note-based and rhythmic-based, right? There's a lot of emphasis in the way that certain aspects or certain layers would emphasize specific beats against other ones, and we would get different tones emphasizing different beats and have this really neat idea going on a rhythmic level, but also looking at it from notes and how these chords are stacking up and these triads, and what notes are being played with others, and how these melodic lines that would work, not, they wouldn't be too bad on their own, are coming together to form this multi-layered idea. There's just a lot of really cool things going on in this section all by itself. But again, we have something that feels very small. And then this moves into the final section, which is where we see some of these ideas show up in the electric guitar, the left pan one specifically. There's a right pan guitar that feels like it's pushed further away from me, right? It's sort of angled off center right and just very distant from me. And it is picking up an idea from the second section of the track. The first time when we had the electric guitars come in that were panned, they took over the acoustic guitar section. We're bringing in some ideas from there. We brought the growls back, and I mentioned that there was an interesting element in the rhythm here, and that was because the drums were doing this super like halftime feel. It was very slow, while everybody else, well, not everybody else, the guitars and the bass were doing tremolo picking, 16th notes, I believe. But then the drums picked up the pace and continued to double I guess cut in half the length of their notes until they were also doing the 16th note stuff. And it was a really nice building of intensity that I felt was the first time we really filled the space, but all of this effort, all this work dissolves into nothing. We end up with just a tiny idea. What was it? It was that layered, what did I say? Possibly looping. No, what was it? What's that pedal called? Delay. Possibly delay. That layered possible delay section. And we finish out the song with that, and then this weird drum fill that comes out of nowhere. It sounds like 4 tom hits descending, just like, and like, I really thought it was going to be that was going to be the moment that implies a larger finale. We get that doodaloo, and then the guitars continue their idea, and then we get like a big chord or something like that, and lots of drumming or whatever. But no, it ends with a whimper. They bring in this moment, this little tom fill, and it makes me think that there's going to be a next section. It implies more, and then it doesn't deliver on that. It just allows the song to fade back out into how it started, with that being the birds and the wind and the static and all of that. And we end up with a song that, well, it does what Agalloch does best: take people on a journey. I don't think I can deny that. And like I said earlier, on paper, there's a lot of really neat elements in here. They do a fantastic job at musical storytelling by foreshadowing events, doing callbacks to old ideas, having their transitions borrow stuff. When they bring in, when they replace instruments, they don't necessarily always replace the musical ideas that those instruments were playing. And they seem to be very comfortable as musical shapeshifters, as we saw with, Ashes Against the Grain, where there was probably 5 or 6 genres that I could say we explored, while also having them comparatively played up against this sort of black metal, post metal sound. And they do a lot of that here as well. There are moments where we get that raw black metal element going on, but there's also other sections that explore different vibes, different atmospheres, different genres with that black metal flavor mixed in. And they definitely utilize what they need to tell the story that they want. And I can't deny them that. I can't deny that they are masters at atmosphere. I mean, this song makes me feel small. It makes me feel like I'm listening to something that feels small. I don't think that there's many songs, if any songs, that put me in that mindset where what I'm listening to is insignificant in a larger idea, right? They are masters at that. But the song just kind of doesn't come together for me. I really do think, at least without the lyrics, without knowing what they had in mind, I think the song works with just the first 10 minutes. I'm not too sure the ending needs to be there, even if that third section, the layered, possibly delayed guitar section, is gorgeous. I definitely think it is the moment of the song that I enjoyed musically the most. I don't know that it adds anything. I'm going to dive into some lyrics here and see if I can't pick out any themes and kind of tie everything together. Interesting. So, there are some cool things going on here. It seems that at least the first 2 verses are... So we have the black metal voice, and then we have the higher pitched kind of yelling, right? Those are 2 different characters, so to speak. The first verse is the voice of the dead, while the second verse is the voice of the Niðstång. And I'm finding that a Niðstång is a wooden pole with a runic curse engraved on it. And it seems to be possessed in some sort. It's kind of what I'm getting a little bit here. And so these lyrics are: I've sent this peril to the world. You watch from below the base of the totem, which would be under the water, since this is the Black Lake Niðstång, which means that it's this this pole that's in a lake, I'm assuming. And when we look at the voice of the dead, they speak of being shadows stuck in a black lake. Um, let's see, we are the faces below the ripples, which is what they say. So it seems to be, um, it says, a deep sorrow traveled through the woods and found a home in our humble grave. So I'm not sure. The kind of vibe I'm getting here is that this pole with this curse in it has cursed the water that it stands within, and either it's luring people into the water to drown, or it's capturing the souls of those who have died in this forest, maybe, and capturing the souls in the water. Not quite sure which one of those to go by. Um, and then the final verse, it says, where have all the noble cranes gone? Where have all the stags disappeared to? Piled below in the tomb of this burdened pool. A curse to those who corrupt these sacred woods, a curse to those who taste this solemn water. So it's possible that it's only taking the souls of those who wish harm on the environment. It says that the woods are sacred, so they have import to the people around them, possibly, or maybe import to the world. Interesting. It says, no unhallowed breath shall seal a fate before me. Join the drowned in the silence of the Black Lake's womb, accursed written in the waters. So it seems to find people who are hurting nature, or specifically this cursed, the sacred woods. And like I said, either kills them or steals their soul and traps them into this lake. So assuming I'm getting this right, which maybe I'm not, but what I'm getting out of this certainly lines up with some of the things I was feeling. The intro aspect of that monolithic guitar could be this curse, this overbearing otherworldly idea. Um, I'm not one to believe in curses, but if I ever saw a pool of water with souls beneath it screaming at me, I think that would rock my world a little bit. Um, and that would be something that would cause me to reevaluate everything that I believe to be true. It would be a moment of staring at something monolithic and not of this world. That feeling of being insignificant. If I saw this, I would understand that there is some sort of other plane of life, or another plane of death, I guess I should say, that exists against this plane of life. And that would definitely make me feel a bit smaller, because right now I already feel small, because, the universe is like massive, and I'm just one person out of 7 billion on a planet out of who knows how many planets, and universe of who knows how vast. Like, there's already that idea of being small. But what if I add another layer onto that and say, oh, I'm just looking at our plane. There's also other planes of existence. Um, so, yeah, this idea of insignificance among something so massive and not understandable with my current worldview is definitely lining up with that element of that electric guitar piercing through the beginning. The intro of having the static and the wind and the birds puts us in this idea of a forest, which is, we are in the sacred woods. That's where this Black Lake exists. So those things are lining up. And I do like the rising aggression through some of this. Interesting, also giving the voice of the Niðstång this wailing aspect makes it feel like it's in pain as well. I had mentioned that it felt like it was screaming into the void, and no matter how desperate their voice became, it was not going to be heard. And I wonder if the curse might feel that way. They are doing their best to save these woods, right? By cursing those who might corrupt it, and cursing those who would taste the solemn water, capturing their souls and putting them into the Black Lake here. But maybe it feels like it's just not doing enough. Maybe it feels like its actions are minuscule, right? Taking down one or two bad dudes here and there is not going to stop the way that a lot of people might want to attack these woods. Maybe if we took this into more of a modern sense, which I don't really get here, but if we took this into more of a modern sense, it would be like, stopping the people who are actually cutting down forests. They're not I mean, they are committing the deforestation, but it's not by their command. We can, this curse could certainly kill the workers, but the CEOs and the presidents of the world who are asking for this to be done and paying for the deforestation are going to send more workers. You're not you're attacking the symptom, not the root cause. And maybe this curse might feel that way. They're continuously collecting the souls of these people who are attempting to corrupt these woods, but it's not enough. There's always more. Maybe they feel like they are fighting an endless battle, and it's wearing on them in a bit. Also, it feels like they lack a voice. It says, "I am the silence inside the tomb." And we've given it a voice in this song, but it's more of a personification, right? I don't think a curse that is cursing a wooden stick is necessarily going to feel like it has an opportunity to speak its thoughts. And there might be some fatigue there as well, kind of feeling a bit defeated in that manner. I don't know. It's a really interesting song. The second half, I'm in the verse 3 where he asks where has everything gone? Well, I've piled them below in the tomb of the bird and pool. I think this is important to tell us what's going on here, because this is the part where it says that it's a curse to those who corrupt the sacred woods. Like, I'm only specifically attacking these bad apples here, but musically, I don't think much of this lines up. I don't see as much of a correlation as I do with the first two verses. And the outro, I mean, it kind of works, I guess, in this view, but yeah, the second half of the song's still just not coming together for me. And again, maybe that's because I looked at it critically, right? Maybe if I listen to this casually and really allow the atmospheres to wash over me, I might walk away with a different vibe. And that happens a lot with some of these more repetitive tracks that I try to take a more critical angle on, and I always walk away a little underwhelmed, and that's because it's more of a feeling, emotional kind of thing. So I don't want to put the blame on them for that one. I am going to say that I walked away a little underwhelmed with the second half, but I'm going to put the blame on me until I give it a listen more casually, and we'll see how that turns out. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Agalloch's Black Lake Niðstång. This is where you come in. Let me know what you thought of this track, if you agree with me, if you have any insight into it, especially any of the lore or mythology of the Niðstång. I think I'm getting a very 101 quick rundown of this, and there's probably some context I'm missing that might help me understand it better. And also what your experience with this song was, if you felt something a little bit more otherworldly or different emotions than I did. Go ahead and let me know in the comments. Above the comment section, there's a description box, and then there's a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here with everything related to the channel. You can join the Patreon and help vote on future songs and themes. You can follow me on Twitter. You can join the Discord and talk with everybody. You can submit special selections. You can pick up some merch. This is a bunch of stuff. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And that wraps it up for this one. I have now devoted 3 hours to Agalloch in the last 2 days. In the last 3 days, I guess. They are a band that I am never lacking for words. They're always doing something interesting, even if I don't necessarily enjoy it all the time. I can't lie that they're intriguing, and they're masters of what they do. So we had one more video that's probably over by now. it came out half an hour ago, and it's probably only about half an hour long, so go ahead and check that one out. It's our special selection for today. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Well, I guess that's not usual. 5 p.m. EST is usual, but the UTC is different, so it might be earlier for some people. Anyways, that's it for today. Remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.